You know, God sends all kinds of puzzle pieces to us to figure out what to do with, and some are pleasant and some are unpleasant. The pleasant ones we don't have too much problem with usually. We think that's the way it should be. Those things come into our lives, friends, whatever, and they should be there. It's those other ones that we have problems with, or they're challenges to fit into life, those unpleasant ones. And we tend to look at those as, well, they shouldn't be there. There's something wrong. That's why in this, these video blogs I'm doing, I kind of focus on the challenging ones, the unpleasant ones, because that's might be more helpful to us since we know what to do with the pleasant ones. And one of the most unpleasant pieces that we have to fit into our lives is uncertainty. We hate it usually. We just don't like it. There's something in us human beings that we just don't like it. I think it triggers our fears of what might happen in the future. If it's things are uncertain, we kind of automatically go to that worst case scenario. Well, what's going to happen? What's going to be the worst case scenario? And that's scary because we can think up a lot of awful things that can happen. So we don't like that. That scares us. So we have to cope with that somehow. So many times what we do, we pretend that there is certainty. We kind of pretend. That's how we cope. For example, I'm pretty certain that I'm going to take my next breath. Well, there's no guarantee with that, but I choose to think that way because it helps me to function and helps me to go on. I also, am pretty certain that, I'm going to get this video recorded before a meteor hits the earth and wipes us all out. Well, I'm pretty certain of that, but again, there's no guarantee. So it's still uncertainty. But there's nothing wrong with functioning that way, kind of pretending that way because it helps us function, helps us not go crazy. So we all do that in our own way. Now we run into problems when we start believing our pretense, when we forget that we are pretending, that things are certain, when we forget that things are not certain. We can run into trouble when that happens because we mistake our illusion of reality of certainty for reality. And that causes us problems. We're not seeing things clearly if we're doing that. And that's what happens. That's what happens. We run into all kinds of problems with that. One of the things that happens is we latch on to an explanation of why things are the way they are, and we make that the gospel truth. We say, well, that's it. That's the black and white answer to why things are the way they are, which explains reality and that there's no uncertainty in that, right? So we latch onto something like that, and it becomes a rigid black and white thinking. Okay, I'm right. This is the way it is. There's no other explanation of reality. Religions do that quite a bit, especially those who tend to be, fundamental. They say, well, this is the way it is, and you can be certain. People are afraid traditionally. People have been afraid, well, am I going to hell? Well, religions step in and say, you want to be certain? Well, here's what you do. And here's the black and white answer. That's what religions have done in the past and still do. Cults are that way. You follow a cult leader. They say, well, this is the truth. This is the way it is. And you can trust it. And, you don't want to wonder about what's going on out there. Here's the truth. And that's what cults do. The whole thing with conspiracy theories these days, that's people's attempts to, I think, deal with uncertainty. There's some uncertain things out there. Why are things happening the way they're happening? And so we don't like that feeling. So we kind of grab onto something, some explanation of why things are. And it must be because the powers that be are trying to control us and manipulate us somehow in some conspiracy way. You know, that's happening quite a bit these days. And I think it indicates how, kind of how fear is kind of in a lot of us in society and how that's infiltrating and it's causing us lots of problems along those lines. Now, when we do those things, when we kind of latch on to that black and white uh, thinking, rigid thinking, and those types of things that explain reality, it causes problems. One of the things is pain. When reality forcibly shatters our illusion of certainty, when things happen that it just don't fit in our explanation of things, then our world feels like it's falling apart. What we thought was real is not, and we fall apart, and it's awful. It's a painful process. We have to come to some other way of looking at things. So that's a real painful process to go through. It also causes polarization, and conflict, because my explanation will be different than someone else's explanation of why things are the way they are. And, then we fight. And those people don't fit in my view of things. And so I have to reject them. We have to get rid of them or whatever. And also, if we're stuck in our certainty, then we believe there's nothing else out there. There's no other possibilities. There's no other knowledge. There's no more information out there to explain why things are. And so we stay stuck. And we never grow in our understanding, our knowledge, our wisdom. We stay stuck. That's another problem with that. So what do we do? What do we do with uncertainty? Well, I think somehow we have to make peace with it. We have to make peace with it somehow. And that means making peace with our fears. Fears of what might happen, what's going on, what's the scary things out there. One thing to do, one exercise to do is to, think back, when has the worst case scenario, whatever you imagine that to be in whatever situation, when has that actually come true? If you're like me, rarely has that come true. I can always imagine, something worse than what actually happens. So, our past experience can tell us, well, the worst case scenario is probably not going to happen. So you don't have to be as scared of that. Another thing we can do is, we can kind of think back and say, well, everything has always been uncertain. Nothing's been guaranteed, and we're still here. Somehow we survived. We're still here. So uncertainty in itself isn't, threatening. It's the way things always have been, and it hasn't destroyed us yet. So that's one way to kind of deal with our fear. Another thing to think about is, think of uncertainty, how that has kind of pushed us on to seek new experiences, new knowledge. I didn't know what was going on or how this was working, so I kind of go out there and look, try to find and discover. I have all kinds of new experiences that way. I go to another country. I'm not certain what it's going to be, but I have great new experiences. So we can look at our uncertainty as kind of a driving force for helping us grow beyond where we're at in our experience, our knowledge, our relationships, all kinds of ways. So maybe that can be a way of kind of dealing with uncertainty. And finally, of course, for us, trusting in God, having faith and trust that God created this world, this uncertain world, in this way for some kind of purpose. Now, we're uncertain what that is. We're not clear on that, but we're still uncertain, but we place all that in God's hands. That's where our faith comes in. We place that in God's hands, trusting that God has gotten us this far and God will get us farther. And maybe that will help us go out there and meet all the unexpected eventualities with courage and confidence, if we trust in God's care, God's love. And we share that with each other. So I hope some of these things that I've shared today are helpful, that help you deal with the eventualities of life, the uncertainties of life. And I just wish you the grace and to go out there and brave those uncertainties and be open to all the unimaginable experiences and blessings and things that God still has in store for us if we kind of venture into the unknown a little bit more and be open to the uncertainties of life to see what God might have in store for us.